Welcome to the Heart of Law podcast. My name is Mirena Umizaj, and I'm your host. This is episode 2 of season 3, and I am not going to lie, we have an incredible lineup this season. Today, I am beyond excited to welcome on the show attorney Ed Bell. Ed is founder and senior partner at Bell Legal Group in Georgetown, South Carolina. Ed is one of the best trial lawyers in the country today, with a career spanning over 30 years. But Ed is not just a lawyer. He is what I call a unicorn. He's a businessman, he's an entrepreneur, and a philanthropist. Ed was recently inducted in the Hall of Fame at Mass Torts Made Perfect, amongst many other esteemed awards that he has received over the years and decades. I have had the privilege to personally know Ed in the past 2 years through my work, and I can say with confidence that I have never met anyone like him. And I have met hundreds, if not thousands, of lawyers in my career. Ed graduated in the University of South Carolina School of Law, and over time, he became top civil litigator in complex litigation, starting in auto torts and safety field. This led to him establishing a vehicle safety research center, conducting auto defect investigations, accident reenactment, and more. Ed also has a passion for environmental law, working on many projects over the decades, including leading the charge to pass the Camp Lejeune Justice Act, along scores of victims and advocates. He worked on this case for close to 15 years before he finally broke through. An incredible victory for the hundreds of thousands of victims affected. Ed, welcome to the Heart of Law podcast. It is an honor to have you on.
Well, thank you, Mirena. It's an honor to be with you.
Thank you so much, so much. Before we dive in, because I want to dive deep, when you reflect on your career, the highs and the lows, the wins and the losses that you've experienced, is there a common thread or a pattern that you notice in yourself, that you recognize in yourself, that drives you? Because I feel like you leap forward, sometimes against all odds. So just curious to know what that might be, what that secret ingredient is.
I've been looking to figure that out myself, for years. I think, Mirena, those of us who believe passionately in something, no matter whether it's cooking or law or husbandry or animals, whatever, there's some people that have this driving passion that makes them strive for excellence. I think I try to have some of that. Every now and then I feel it, and sometimes I don't. I have to go looking for it. But I think it's part of any successful attorney, doctor, businessman. It's just a different passion for what you're doing.
Yeah. So you wake up in the morning and there's a million things happening around you, and there's only one of you. You have to focus your attention and inspire people into action. How do you sort of prioritize what's important that day or, in that week in your life?
Well, I'm lucky that we've had a good team with us. And so a lot of the things we do that are everyday stuff and otherwise are done by our team. But there's always something that's pressing me every day that's number one. Mm-hmm. And I wish I could say I wake up in the morning. Many times that thing that's pressing wakes me up, and I don't know why, but 3 to 4 in the morning is my time sometimes. And I just get out of bed and I can't sleep and go sit down and start thinking about it.
So is it more like sitting in prayer or sitting in meditation, or you have a morning routine just to kind of center yourself before the day takes over?
The best days when I do that.
Yeah.
but I have children and I have family, and sometimes they don't allow the meditation that you'd like to have. But as you know, you have young children yourself.
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally. I understand that very well. Um, so I want to do something different on this podcast. So instead of starting at the beginning of your legal journey, of your just where it all sort of started, even your life and how you grew up and what's important to you in terms of values, I want to start with the present because I think a lot of people that tune into my podcast are attorneys, a lot of them in mass torts, and they want to hear what's relevant and what's the latest. So I would like for you to share, in the legal industry nationwide, you've caught the attention of many law firms and many people through the Camp Lejeune case. Can you share the latest news on Camp Lejeune as of April 22nd?
Well, the latest news is we are now engaged with the court, which is exciting.
Yeah.
We had 100 and something lawyers attend the hearing the other day, which actually pleased me to no end because this case is too big for one person, obviously. And to see the quality of lawyers that were in that audience made me feel really good. So I think the court's gonna be happy with the attorneys that are there. I think the court's gonna see our passion and those folks that are representing these victims and families. If we watch out for them as our clients and keep that as our focus, then I think this will be successful.
A lot of people have expressed a concern with this court and their ability to handle this case. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, this court is an extraordinary court. I think that the statute was designed so that these cases actually would go back to this court. This court's got a reputation nationally for I'm trying to think of the term. There's no BS in this court. This court runs their cases. The lawyers don't run their cases. You are either prepared or you just are maligned. It makes you either be a great lawyer or you better stay home. And this is what good lawyers like, because they like judges that make you do your job, and that's good for your clients. So I'm excited about it. I think I hope the judges are excited about it. This may be the most important legal case against the government in U.S. history. Some people say it might be the largest. I'm not sure that's the measuring stick that I use.
Right.
Our government for over 33 years allowed families, Marines, mothers, children to drink some of the most poisonous water available in this world. And almost definitely hundreds and thousands of people would be affected when they drank this water.
Yeah.
I can just imagine when in 1997, when the government finally came out with the first notice, and you're a mom or a dad, and you said, well, my 2 or 3 children were at Camp Lejeune. We all drank the water. Do I have cancer now? Is this, and every time you turn over in bed and something hurts, or you wake up with a headache, or your leg has something wrong, people tell me all the time, am I getting cancer? Do I have cancer now? And it's something that's it's a horrible thing. So I think those families that I got to know over 15 years we've been working on this case are the things that inspired me to kind of get us where we are today.
Yeah. Do you think, well, can you share what happened at the latest hearing? So obviously you were there and there was a lot of firms. I heard there was over 100 lawyers there.
Yeah.
What did the judge say? What did the government say, if anything?
Well, the court was concerned that there hadn't been any kind of move on behalf of the Navy to get some of these cases resolved. I mean, the statute clearly says that these cases have merit. I mean, it's not an ambiguity there. And the court politely chastised the government. And look, the lawyers that were there They haven't done anything wrong. They're great lawyers. I've known them for years. They've worked hard to represent the government well, and it's not their fault. They were not the people that got involved. But unfortunately, they are the ones that have to carry the message. And the message from the court was, let's get something done. Let's try to get it done quickly. People are dying. Let's get something done so that we don't prolong the agony that these people have gone through. I support that.
Yeah. Obviously, the court shared that it would be impossible to try all these cases, right? So, what do you think is the best way to go about getting justice for all the victims through, a court system that's really not designed to handle this kind of volume?
We all, as lawyers, have cases that both sides say need to be resolved, need to be settled. The rub is what's the value? One side has one value, the other side has another. And sometimes having a jury sitting there looking at you, kind of like the Fox case last week, or this week, I guess. And everybody knew that we're getting ready to have someone make a decision for us. Maybe it'd be better off if we make it ourselves. So I think there's going to be probably a respected disagreement of the value of some of these cases. Some I hope there will not be, but some I think there will be. And I think that having the ability to have some what they call test trials or bellwether trials is something that gives both sides the chance to kind of test their theory, see what these things are worth. I haven't had a client yet ask me what their case is worth. They don't care. That's not their goal. The goal is to have somebody say, why did you kill my children? Why am I living without my spouse? We have so many families, Mirena, that have lost all of their family members that were at Camp Lejeune, and they just all, and you can see the pattern. If they lived in the worst location, if they stayed there longer than other people, it's that dose, it's the amount of water they drank, it's almost certain that they're going to have it. And a lot of these people have multiple diagnoses. It's the chance that you or I will get cancer in our lifetime is fairly minimum. We know people that get it, of course. Women have more of a female issues with cancer than men do, unfortunately. I think it has a lot to do with the hormones we all have. But when you multiply that chance of having cancer, not just one time, not two times, but hundreds of times by these toxic chemicals, then you've created something in these families it's unbearable. They want to know why. They want to know why the government did it. Why are they being allowed to get away with it? If they had done something like that, if they had poured some toxic chemicals out in their backyard and polluted the neighborhood up, the government would come down hard on them. And so they want to know why they're getting treated this way. And I think the court is anxious to get things done. I think the court recognizes that expediency is important to these people. And I think most people there appreciated that.
Well, I think most of these people are older, right? The ones who are still alive that are dealing with these diseases are an older population. So it's not just a matter of making sure justice is served, making sure the justice is served before, these people pass. So I think it's imperative in so many ways that this litigation, unlike most torts that we see where the cycles are getting longer, that the cycle of this tort needs to be expedited because these clients don't have the longevity to wait for closure and for justice, right?
That's so true. There are a lot of people who have already died, who've passed away. I can tell you stories that you would not believe and would horrify you. But for those folks that are still around and are worried about their health and worried about their life expectancy and their families, I think it's time to do something. I think it's not up to them they weren't the ones that did anything wrong. The government did. And so I think the court was saying to the government, let's don't drag this thing out. If you have a legitimate fight or legitimate position, let's decide it quickly. Let's don't sit there and just let time get under us and this thing lag around. And that wasn't the purpose of this statute. The purpose was to get justice for these people, and the court, I think, recognized that.
Are you able to share, Ed, if plaintiff attorneys, plaintiff firms have talked or been talking to the government, the Department of Justice, the JAG? What's the latest on that front?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people talk to the government, and I think the government has been willing to listen. But until we get legally engaged on the litigation side, and the Navy kind of, I mean, look, they've got thousands of claims. I don't know how they're going to go about doing it. I'm not sure whether they're putting any real effort into getting it done quickly. I think the court wanted an answer to that question. If they're saying, well, we don't have enough people, well, is the answer to say we can't do anything and just say we aren't going to help you? Or is the answer to get more people and get to work? I'll promise you this. If those people in the government had been affected like our clients would be, they'd want someone to get off their butt and get something done.
Yeah. So you think it's more of the government just doesn't have the resources or just hasn't been able to wrap their heads around this case, first and foremost, and then it's the legal strategy, and then it's gridding the value of these cases and then paying them, right? Is that sort of?
It's all of that, but it starts out with your legal claim you file. And I'll give you an example. If you're driving down the road and you get in an accident with a Navy truck, for example, you file your claim. They look at it. They try to settle it. If you can't settle it, then you file your legal claim. It's a standard practice. But all of a sudden, instead of having hundreds of claims a year, they're now getting faced with thousands of claims. Now, they've had a lot of time to work that up, and I think that they should be gearing up, but I'm not sure if they have the resources. I don't know the answer, but I do think that that's important to figure that out. A lot of people would like to get their case resolved and not have to go to court. And I think it's an important thing to do.
So that leads me to the next question. I've heard from the public that, there is this movement against lawyers being involved. In fact, a lot of people say we don't even need the lawyers. We just need to file a claim with the government directly and not having to pay attorney fees. And of course, there is also a movement in Congress as we speak, trying to limit attorney fees to 2 to 10%. What is your reaction to that? What's as I know you're a lawyer, so you're going to give the lawyer answer, but what is really the truth here going on? Is there a need for attorneys in this case or not?
I do think there's been some misconception, and I'll try to give you my side, if you will.
Yeah.
No, if a lawyer is restricted to such low numbers, like Senator Sullivan says, these clients who need excellent lawyers will not be able to hire them. So the government is putting their very best lawyers forward. The lawyers under attorney Adam Bain, and they are excellent. They are the top of the line attorneys. And would it be fair to a client who wants to fuss and fight about their case not to be able to hire an excellent lawyer? Now, that's not to say that there shouldn't be some reasonable governance of these caps, and I agree with that. I think that there's a place in there, but Senator Sullivan didn't vote for the bill; he voted against it, and now he's trying to stop people from getting anything done. It's the leading Republican sponsor from North Carolina is a congressman named Greg Murphy.
Mm-hmm.
Dr. Murphy is a urological surgeon. he wanted to know at the beginning, why do a lot of my patients have bladder and kidney cancer? And he was outraged that this happened to his patients. He said, if I had only known that this was going on years ago, I could have set up screening procedures to catch these cancers early so I could have cured them.
Right.
And so Dr. Murphy knows what it takes to go to court. He's in a profession, unfortunately, that is part of the process when people have problems. But he understands the expense of going to court, and he understands that being able to choose your correct attorney is important. He's not signed on to that bill. He's not endorsed that bill. I do think that somewhere, I think, Senator Durbin has a bill that does 1/3 fee. Now, look, there's some people that can file their claims without a lawyer, and that's true.
Right.
And I understand that they have done that. But here's the problem: if you have one of the cases that is what we call a presumptive case, then the problem is not so hard to solve. But that's only about 25% or 23% of the cases. For those thousands of people who don't have a presumptive case, they will never be able to hire a lawyer if those fees are cut. So my job as kind of the person who got this started is not necessarily just to protect the easy cases, but to protect those people who otherwise wouldn't have a voice. And that's important.
Yeah. Do you think at the end of the day that there is going to be a group of people, a large group of people that don't have lawyers, and then there's obviously a large group of people that do? What do you think the difference between those settlements would be if you could give your theory?
Well, if you have a presumptive disease, I'm not sure that I can predict that. But if you don't have a presumptive disease, I fear those clients will get nothing. And if they can't afford to hire a lawyer who's willing to work, willing to fight for them, then they may not be able to go forward at all. So that's my concern. So when people hear that I'm fighting to keep the ability of people to choose their lawyers under their own terms, I mean, look, Marines are smart people. They can negotiate. It's not that they have to do these things. I have people who call me all the time and talk about it.
Right.
And so I think it's important to preserve our ability to. Look, Congress isn't trying to restrict CEO salaries, are they? They're not trying to restrict stockbroker commissions. They're just trying to restrict lawyer fees because it's a political thing. That's it.
Yeah. So do you think that the people who don't have a lawyer would get the same settlement if there was a grid established through bellwether trials, for example? You try different cancer cases, a grid is established, and you're able to settle those cases, your cases, under that grid. Would the people without lawyers be able to do the same using the same grid matrix, if that makes sense?
Yeah, no matter what the grid matrix may end up being, you still need to be able to prove up your case. So if you, I have a client that lost 3 children back in, I think, in the 70s. We've been unable to find her records and unable to find those records. We just got some records in recently that are microfiche records. I'm not sure that client would have been able to issue subpoenas and find those records if they didn't have any help. So I'm not saying they can't get some resolution. I think they have a better chance if they have somebody who's fighting for them.
Yeah. And Ed, obviously you've told me from the beginning that there will be bellwether cases, that you're prepared to try the cases. In fact, you cannot wait to try some of these cases. So tell me about sort of your strategy and what you're thinking to get ready for trial, which could be 6-8 months from now, could be 2 years from now. What's your mindset on getting these cases tried?
Well, I've been working on these cases for 15 years, so the science is pretty well put together for our cases. And so getting our cases ready for trial will not take a lot to do. We're ready.
Yeah. In fact, I mean, you can go, I mean, how quickly can you go to trial?
I could go to trial probably in 2 months on most cases. So I'm hoping the judges in North Carolina will let us get started.
Right. So I want to start peeling back some of the layers, because as we talk about the litigation itself, which is really the most important thing, and the people affected by it, there is a story. And I think it's important for those, whether it's lawyers or whether it's just a Marine watching this, to tell the story of how we got here, because in doing that, we're giving some sense of integrity and respect to those who are involved in this case one way or another. You led the charge to pass the Camp Lejeune Justice Act. But before that, you had been involved in these cases for many, many years. Can you tell the story of how you got involved in the Camp Lejeune cases and what happened during the time that there was no action?
Well, in 2007, an attorney from North Carolina called me, and she had a family that had been affected by the water, Camp Lejeune, and asked if I would help her. And that was my first contact. In fact, Jody Licardi is her name. She was in court the other day with us. She and I have remained close and friends since then. And so we started working on these cases, and the federal courts pulled them into an MDL and sent the cases down to Atlanta. And the government's position was this: we can't engage in these cases unless we have legal authority to do so. I didn't like that answer, but I did understand it. And under the law, they didn't have any legal authority to settle or resolve these cases. And again, I hate to have someone tell me that and they're right. But then I had to figure, I can't take that as an answer. I'm not going to tell my clients they have no hope. So in January 2000, I believe it was 19, the Secretary of the Navy issued a statement that they were denying all the claims, that Congress had to take care of it. We had already started drafting the bill and presenting it to congressmen to get started. And in fact, our first congressman, excuse me, was Walter Jones, a congressman out of North Carolina, whose district encompassed Camp Lejeune. And Congressman Jones was a known deficit hawk. I don't think he ever voted for, according to what I've been told, a budget that had a deficit in it, ever. And so I was told when I was going to go meet him that he loved the Marines, he loved what he did, he loved the culture of his district, but it would be difficult to get him to authorize or sponsor a bill that authorized people to sue the government. It would cost the government money. And so I had lunch with Congressman Jones one day, and I told him the story, and he got outraged. He said, "You know, I have been congressman for this base for years. No one has ever told me that story. Why have I been lied to?" Mm-hmm. He immediately said he would co-sponsor the bill. And in fact, he was our first original sponsor. That was in 2017. And Walter, as I got to know him, ran for re-election, got re-elected, and shortly after that was diagnosed with Lou Gehrig's disease. and died soon thereafter. So we had to wait until the special election was handled. That's when Dr. Murphy got elected as a Republican. We went to see him. He immediately agreed to sponsor the bill and take over where Congressman Jones' office had been. In fact, the legislative aide that was working with us on the bill went to work with Dr. Murphy, and that was a good kind of handoff. So that's how it got started. We worked in Congress for years and talked to congressmen and senators and told them the story. And we had nobody that said no that we met with. We had some people that wouldn't meet with us. Senator Sullivan would not meet with us. There was another senator from up north that didn't want to meet with us. But other than those two, everybody we met with said yes. And so, then the same thing with the congressman. It was a very bipartisan bill. We didn't make it a Republican and Democratic bill. This was all about the Marines, and people felt this anger that the government had done what they had done, and no one could believe that this in fact happened.
Speaking of the government letting this happen and then covering it up, what triggered you to start working on the bill? Like, some information became available, right? And so I want to understand sort of the timeline. So what happened triggered you to write the bill, and then COVID happened and it gave you some time to really dive into this in a way that you hadn't done before, because you were trying cases before that, life was busy, but then the world stopped during COVID and you're like, let me focus on this, right?
That's true. We were all kicked out of court back in
2019. Yeah.
That was the final, but we've been kicked out in the 11th Circuit back in 2014 and 15. Right. And so we were working on the bill, but when COVID came along, I didn't have any judges fussing at me about going to court. I didn't have anybody saying, let's go to trial next week. And I had time, and I spent almost 3 years up in Washington and working, and we had to hire lobbyists. We weren't sure what we could and couldn't do with our work with Congress. There are all kinds of rules up there, and so we wanted to make sure we followed the rules, and we did. And we worked with our lobbying groups who themselves got inspired. It was amazing. We ended up with a lot of folks helping, and people called and wanted to volunteer their help. It was an amazing movement, and we ended up getting it passed.
Yeah. What information became available that made you think you have to take this all the way to the finish line? Obviously, there was a study done by the government, right? And that was it classified information? And then it leaked? What happened?
Well, I think you're referring to the AT-SDR study, in 2017.
Right.
And there was a bill passed called the Janie Hemsfinger Act, and it required the government to do a study of Camp Lejeune in the water. And because of that bill that was passed, a little girl named Janie Hemsfinger died of leukemia. She was young. She was, I think, 9 years old. Her father, Jerry Hemsfinger, was passionate about helping get this thing done. He himself, when he learned what had happened, he knew right away his daughter had gotten leukemia from the cancer. And so when we were kicked out of court, and then we got this study that said all of these things were connected, we had to figure out a way to get these folks their ability to find justice. And that's what we did. I'm not sure that it was a single thing, but when we got kicked out of court, Mirena, I had a meeting, and back then we didn't do Zooms. I had a meeting with a bunch of our clients, and I didn't know how to tell them the case was over. And in the middle of that meeting, I said, "Don't worry, we're going to do something. I'll take care of it." And that wasn't planned, and so here we are.
Yeah. So in short, the service members who signed up to defend their country and the people who supported them at the Camp Lejeune military base were being poisoned, drinking this water that was contaminated with deadly chemicals like benzene and TCPs. And that happened over the span of 30 years. So these people experienced the highest rates of cancer and Parkinson's, MS, LS, everything that's listed on the ATSDR report. From our conversations, you believe there is even more diseases that are not included in that study. And these people had no idea that it was because of the water that they were drinking. So obviously, as you say, a lot of things happened, right, to crack this case open. You personally took the initiative to get in front of congressmen and congresswomen to tell the story of what had happened. You used personal resources, money, to lobby for years. Were you working with other people, or who else was contributing it to help you get in front of these congressmen and congresswomen, hire lobbying groups to get this bill passed? And can you share some light into that?
Yeah, uh, we had people that we had a lot of people that laughed and said we couldn't do it, but we had people that said we'll help. There's a retired general in North Carolina named Hugh Overholt. He retired as the chief judge advocate of the entire Army. He was a military man, and we got him involved to help us with drafting some of the language and how politically helping us figure these things out. It was General Overholt that introduced me to Walter Jones. And so we had this group of folks, and all of a sudden we'd hit a bump in the road, and we need someone else to come in. And our group started growing and growing. And we worked together as a group for those 4 or 5 years, having regular meetings every week. And sometimes when something would come up and look like it would be impossible, we just kept trudging away. But we had a lot of group. And then toward the end, we had some law firms around the country that helped, and there was a big help. And so when people finally learned the story, and we didn't talk about it publicly, we didn't make a big splash about it. We didn't have news conferences. We didn't do that. We wanted to have private conversations with the congressmen and senators, and we did that. And that's how we got it done.
Yeah. Were you nervous? Like, obviously you're spending a lot of time and resources that you didn't know if you were ever going to see any results. You were a medical malpractice attorney. You didn't do high volume cases, right? You're a boutique at this point in time, a boutique firm, that every case that came through the door, you saw that as a case you were going to take to trial, right? So when you're working on this project in terms of like the business model, the ability to take a project like this to the finish line, like what was going through your head? Were you even thinking about some of this stuff, or it was just like, let's just see, I'm just going to keep going forward?
Well, we always in our firm have always had a big case or two kind of hanging around. I got a case when I was 4 years out of law school that lasted 27 years, and it ended up being the largest verdict in our state, but it took me that long to get it. And so we're used to, at least I am, I don't give up. But one of the things that was that we did not expect, Mirena, and this is something I don't know whether it's okay to say this, but this was a very, very satisfying project we had, but not realizing the impact it would have on us. Right. As a law firm. That's when I reached out to you and your group and said, look, I'm a pretty good lawyer, and I need somebody to give me some help and some advice. And your group has come in and helped us tremendously in our growth and our management of certain things. And at first, when I think some people were saying, how can this little law firm handle these cases? I think if anyone were to come in and see us now, I think we went from 17 employees, we have now 90 employees. I mean, It's but everybody's working hard. We can see progress with our clients. For the most part, there's always somebody that doesn't get a phone call, and we try to stop at many of those. But for the most part, we have a great group of satisfied clients that are engaged, and we talk to them all the time.
Yeah. I was telling you this, and I don't think I've said this on the record, but before I met you, obviously I was very involved in mass torts and product liability. I also work with firms that do single event cases around the country, doing a lot of financial services consulting, helping law firms scale and bring in what they need to be able to handle bigger projects. But before I met you, I was doing this podcast, and then I met you, and then the podcast stopped. And many people said, "What happened? I love your podcast." And I said, I'm involved in this project, and it's taken everything out of me, right? I have a family. I have, my son at the time was not even 2 years old. And it was all consuming. And so as we go down in memory lane, this conversation, this project is cathartic for me in so many ways. And I could probably sit here and cry and sob with you, because it's affected me in ways that I'm affected by clients and by cases, because we come in and we pour our heart into everything that we do. But this was bigger. This was bigger than anything I'd ever come across. And I'm just a girl from an Eastern European country where I experienced civil war, and I experienced, genocide in our sister country, Kosovo. And American troops were there to help save my people from genocide. And a lot of these people who were testifying in the Senate, and they were saying where they had been deployed, my country was one of those countries. So it became deeply personal for me to just be aligned with your mission and give it my all, not knowing exactly where it was going. But when I met you in your office for the first time, and you told me, come down and meet me, because you're old school like that, and you want to meet people in person, and you want to cook for them. And there's nobody, I've told you this, like, you're the best host in the world. But as I came to Georgetown, I'm thinking, what is this place? I've never even heard of this place before. And I come there and I meet with you, and there is in your office pictures of you with presidents, and you with Congress people, and you with clients, and trophies, and everything you've received in your career. And then I see a simple sign that said Camp Lejeune. And I refer to this moment when I tell the story from my lens as my Aaron Bronkovich moment, because I sat down with you across the table in your conference room, and you told me the story of this case. And you told me that you wanted to find people that could align with your mission to see this bill passed in the Senate and help hundreds of thousands of people. You said, Mirena, this could be the largest case in U.S. history, but more importantly, this is the first time that service members can sue the government and seek justice and have recourse for what's been done to them. Most of these people don't know what was done to them. So I asked you questions. You told me everything that you had to share with me at that time. And my first instinct, right, there was this mixed emotion, was that you were crazy, absolutely nuts, that this was just way too big. And you are this lawyer from a small town in South Carolina, and it's just not possible, right? So the other side was that this was the biggest mission, and you were serious about this mission, that absolutely captivated me. And so while logically I couldn't fully understand, and I'm not an attorney, so I couldn't understand the legalities, my instinct told me that this was a case I needed to be involved and just be in your orbit one way or another. And it's probably one of the best decisions I've made in my career, meeting you and throwing myself into this case. So I'm deeply grateful that you gave me an opportunity to go along with you on this journey and to find a way to get this bill passed and develop what might be one of the most important projects of my career. So I just want to say thank you on the record for just being what I said in the beginning, a unicorn.
Well, in the politics of this world, unicorn is not necessarily the best thing, but I understand what you're saying, the little oddness of it. Mirena, you may not remember this, but soon after you left and you started helping with clients and just kind of getting the story, trying to understand the reality of it all, you started, I'm trying to think how to say it, you started changing in such a meaningful way in the way you kind of talked about the case. It's hard to say, but thank you. Okay. Cut it. Oh, Lordy. It's so true,
It is. My husband is so proud. He tells the story and our family knows, and they know I go to South Carolina a lot, and they know the project. And when they would see or hear about Camp Lejeune, they would tell how I was involved. So it's been life-changing. And I'm so proud of you and what you've accomplished, and I'm just very, very emotional about it, as I know you are. And I love, because you're a guy, you're a real man. You're not afraid to cry. And so many times I've met with you and you just cry and you make me cry. It's just heartfelt all around.
I hope at the end of this case, we won't sit back and talk about the money. We'll talk about the people we helped.
Yeah.
And maybe give a new direction to how people in America have the right to utilize their justice system. Right now, our country is in the throes of all kinds of disruption. Our country is strong. We have had disruptions in our country, and because of our country, we've always done well and survived and come above it. I remember the 60s during the race riots, and we thought the world was going to come to an end. Our country's stronger than that. And I think we'll get through this turmoil we're in now. But what I hope, though, is that the community as a whole, our body politic, our local folks should remember the reason why our founders found the judicial system is so citizens could fuss at each other without killing each other.
Right.
And we just need to go back to that and remember how important it is. I've not agreed with every jury verdict I've had in my life, but I've always respected that verdict, and kind of understood why sometimes that I didn't get the result that I wanted. But having that respect for this system, I hope we can instill that among the people we represent, as well as so that they don't feel like their government can just take over their lives and do anything they want to them.
Yeah. So true. But it's also a reflection of life. Not everything goes according to plan, or you don't always get the results that you want, and you got to pivot. And I think the people who ultimately succeed are people that are determined to keep trying. And that's what you've done in your career. Camp Lejeune opened up a whole new world to you. And before this case, like we talked about, you were handling, the medical malpractice cases, the product liability cases. And then this case made you sort of front and center. AAJ got involved with their lobbying groups. We heard, President Biden and the Speaker of the House at the time, Nancy Pelosi, all of a sudden, like this, just like you said, the perfect storm. Everybody was inclined to get involved and help and make sure that our veterans, who a lot of people say have been forgotten, would be acknowledged and would get the justice they deserved and the acknowledgement they deserved. But obviously, as you find yourself in the middle of all of this, this is happening to you and around you. And there was a lot of pressure. What were you going through personally, and how were you processing everything as this case became the center of attention nationally?
Yeah, that's a very good question. You may remember you told me at the beginning that this was going to happen. And I said, oh no, I can handle it. I think that your help and look, I've got some really good law partners. I've got a wonderful wife. We've just kept our heads down. We just kept plodding away, doing what's right. Everybody worries about what the court's going to do. I'm not worried at all what the court's going to do. They're going to do what they're going to do. And we just need to go along with what's getting ready to happen. And we're getting ready to see some huge things happen. What they are, I can't predict them, but I'm ready for them. And I'm ready I'm excited. And I know the court probably feels that, here they got thrown all these cases in one judicial district in North Carolina. And how in the world did they get hundreds of thousands of cases? No one else in this country could do it like they can. And I got to know this court early on. I saw how they worked. I saw how the system there worked. It's so fair. Everybody knew they were getting a honest shake. And it was also near the military base. And those who went to Camp Lejeune, they loved Camp Lejeune. They learned so much. They got so much training. It was their heartbeat for why they did what they did. And I thought that also they would trust these judges from North Carolina. Maybe not in every area of the country would someone have the same heart for the military as North Carolina does. But I think it's the perfect location. One day hope to apologize to the court for throwing it all on them, but we had to pick something, and this was the best place.
Right. Tell me, Ed, about these, the mass tort world, and obviously the amount of money, because we knew this was a big case. We just didn't know how other people were going to react to this case, meaning how other firms, all of a sudden seasoned, really big mass tort firms that have handled large projects like this got involved. Wall Street got involved, right? Pouring money and capital behind a lot of firms to allow them to go nationally on, very intense advertising campaigns. And all of a sudden, the Camp Lejeune advertising was everywhere: TV, radio, and it was a lot. What do you think, looking back, reflecting at that frenzy, if you have any thoughts?
Think about this. This is the first time in U.S. history that an individual, and especially a military member, can bring a claim against the government. Prior to this time, if you were in the military and you got hurt, you got injured, you could not sue the government. And your family members could, but you could not if you were a service member. Unfortunately, what that does is it creates this feeling like it's okay to hurt somebody because there's no responsibility, there's no and then all of a sudden, for the first time, the worst water pollution case, the water pollution itself is the worst in the country, in our history of our country. And now all of a sudden, for the first time, people who died, families for 30-something years can now bring a claim. Everyone said this is impossible. It couldn't happen, and it blew everything apart. Yeah. So think about this. Remember in East Palestine when the train accident occurred? People were exposed to these fumes for several days. They're worried about lifelong cancer risk for those people. Lifelong cancer risk for the East Palestine people for those 3 to 5 days. And some people got very little inhalation. These people drank water for months and months and years, And if people are worried about a toxic spill in their community, think about having that toxic spill and the government knew about it, and you just kept drinking that water, and they knew it, and they knew it, and they knew it. I've been told, I don't know the answer to this, but I've been told that there are certain areas of Camp Lejeune where some people live that had clean water, and that's where some of those folks live. I don't know if that's true or not. I've been told that. We hope to find that out.
Obviously, the Veterans Bill was more than the Justice Act, the Camp Lejeune Justice Act. There were the burn pits. I believe there were other areas that Marines and service members had been affected. Is it true? I mean, I've read this. I don't think I've asked you directly, but is it true that our President Biden, believes that his son, Bo, who died of brain tumor, believes that he was exposed to toxic chemicals during his time as a service member?
He said so publicly. And I have to say that some of the Republican members of the House and the Senate, they commented about that in a very, not positive that it happened, but they had a heart for President Biden and the belief that his son got the brain tumors from his exposure. And that was one of the things that I think that helped drive even the Republicans to support this is if the president's son can get exposed and get harmed, what's going to happen to people who don't have that power? And I think that drove a lot of people. And I think that to some extent, Bo Biden deserves a lot of credit for what he had to go through and his father's bringing it to the public's attention.
Right. Because these are Marines, and like you said, these are smart, hardworking, savvy people. They cut to the chase. And I love the work ethic, the structure, the passion, the dedication that comes with that and what these people embody. Do you think that there was, as they saw, obviously, I'm sure that there were, finally, that they had information, right? That for the first time, there was information available to understand what was going on. But then all of a sudden, there is these ads all over, and they thought this is now sort of a feeding frenzy, right? There's all these lawyers involved that are just trying to get as many cases as possible. You know, you've heard and talked to a lot of Marines, you represent a lot of them. What is their reaction to what's happened, both in Congress and sort of the business aspect of this case?
The public doesn't understand this, but a lot of those ads that they see are really not lawyer ads. They're non-lawyer advertising groups. And the FTC has statutes in place that could regulate those advertisements. Right. But for some reason, they think they're being regulated by the bar associations in each state. Bar associations can't regulate them because they're non-lawyers. And so, unfortunately, for the good lawyers out there that do honest advertising, some of these non-lawyer advertising folks have given the lawyers a bad name. I'm sure there's a couple of lawyers out there that probably overreached and shouldn't do something, but the bad ads that I see, I called a phone number yesterday of someone who said, if you've lived within 500 miles of Camp Lejeune, you can file a claim. And I'm trying to find out who's doing that, because it's just a lie. And that hurts all of us. But because of all this, a lot of Marines and a lot of Marine families that don't trust them. And I think that they maybe have not wanted to go forward because of that. And I would urge them to don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. There are a lot of good lawyers that'd be willing to take their case and will help them. Just someone asked me the other day, well, how do we find somebody? And I said, well, go to your local lawyer in your hometown and have that local lawyer help you find somebody that is doing that. To me, that's the best way to go.
Yeah, I agree. A lot of your cases have come from, or well, organically and from other law firms, basically saying, Ed, because you've led the effort, we want you to represent us. Um, and of course, these cases are coming from all over the country. And I guess this kind of takes us to the next sort of topic. Let's talk about the growth of your firm, because your firm overnight exploded, right? You went from, you were handling obviously a lot of cases, but this was in the thousands and the thousands. And many people thought in the business, in the legal business, thought there's no way that a small town lawyer that has, less than 20 people on staff, that could handle and represent all these people. How can that be, right? And today you have, like you said, over 90 employees, doing just extraordinary work. And against all odds, your firm has grown and is thriving. And this transition, I know because I've been there with you and helping and develop infrastructure, has been very, very stressful in many ways, but very rewarding because everybody in your firm knows how big of a deal this project is. Can you speak to the growth of your firm and your ability to represent thousands of people? Is that even possible?
So, Marina, that's a very good question that we started asking early on. I chose to live in this little small town. We call it a fishing village. I don't do any local work. All of our work is done nationally. We try cases all over the country. So we're used to trying big cases. Um, we love this little town. We go to church here. We raise our children. My wife and I have two children that are young here, and we like this community. People know everybody, and we chose it because of that. But because we happen to be from Georgetown instead of Houston, doesn't mean that we can't handle something. So the proof is in the pudding. We are good litigators. We know how to manage cases. We know how to put them together. All we're doing is doing more of them. But Ed Bell can only be in one courtroom one at a time, and so we've had to bring on some other staff and other lawyers. We are geared up for it, and actually, we now have an office in North Carolina. We have North Carolina lawyers that are manning that office. We have local lawyers in North Carolina that we've engaged to help us. Some of the best lawyers in the Eastern District are now part of our team, and we're excited about it. It means something to me when some of the top lawyers in the country ask me to help them on these cases. So I think I was pleased to see people do that.
Yeah. So you are basically doing everything in-house. You have a call center, you have, and not to mention, I love the fact that there is family working in your firm. Your wife, who's extraordinary, Dawn, she works in the firm. She supports you, not only the Camp Lejeune, but also your other cases that were there before Camp Lejeune. And the new cases that come in. You have your son-in-law, Eric Flynn, working there. You have your brother-in-law, Aaron Joplin, working there. So there is a family effort. Everybody's involved, which is a very difficult thing to do, by the way, to work with family. But somehow you are the glue and you make this all work and you make it look effortless. What is it like to having to really absorb new ways of doing business, have a new business model, and have so many firms now and many people in the firm now that are helping you with this project?
Yeah, most of the things that I've done in the past, I'm still doing. I'm just doing them in a little bit different way. So I think, leadership in the putting these cases together is still there. I've just been lucky to have others that help with the growth and the management of those other systems. I'll give you an example. We recognize that all of the diseases that were caused by these chemicals were not part of the original NIH study. They just weren't. That doesn't mean they're not related. So we have already started putting together our epidemiological model. We've hired epidemiologists. We've already been told that we think, an additional 20-something diseases that are related that are not part of the ATSDR study, and we're continuing to study those. We've engaged huge medical centers around the country, some in North Carolina, some in Texas, some in Maryland, one on the West Coast, people who specialize in certain kinds of diseases and how they were caused, and the exposure models have been put together. We've been working on this for years. It's not something we just started. And so I think because of that past work we've done, growing as we've done and getting ready for these cases has not really been that hard. We're kind of ready for it. We've been practicing for a long time.
What's unique about the firm, right, as it's developed in the past, past year, is you wanted to have a call center. You wanted every call to be answered, but you wanted to make sure that the calls were being answered by the right people. So you put together and have helped develop this amazing call center made up of veterans and their family members who can answer in that same tone, in that same language, in a way that I don't think anybody else is doing, which reflects why so many firms around the country have chosen you as their handling firm to send their cases to you. Are you working this case like you would work just a single event case, meaning give this group of clients the care and the attention? And is that feasible? Is that something you can sustain, you think?
Yes, but think of it this way. Remember back in the 50s and 60s and 70s, they didn't have water bottles back then.
Right.
Now, you aren't old enough to remember that, but I am. And when we would go play...
I grew up in Albania. I remember that.
but still, in the era of this 50s to early 80s, when you go play baseball at the baseball diamond with your kids, people drank out of the faucet. That's where they got their water. And you go to the grocery store, they all had water fountains because they didn't have water bottles. They didn't have any way to get water. And they may not have a bathroom, but they all had water fountains. And so when you think about what are we doing to get these cases ready, we've got to be able to show that each and every one of our folks we can properly document how they were exposed to the water, not just living at home, but we now know that working over a steaming sink, you're inhaling those fumes, is more damaging to you than just drinking the water. Getting in a hot shower is more damaging to you than drinking the water because the fumes get directly into you and aren't kind of cleaned by your digestive system. So this is an important part of working a case up, not just that someone has a cancer that we think is related, but now how do we prove it up? Because the government is going to require us to do that. And they should. They have to watch out for the government's interests, and I recognize that. So I'm not begrudging that to anybody. I'm just saying we're doing that. We're getting things ready. And when these cases are ready for court, our clients will be ready. They're actively involved. But when you mention this call center, Mirena, it is amazing when a veteran is able to talk to a veteran's family. I don't know what it is. It's that camaraderie. It's that knowledge. They're not all Marines. We got Air Force and Navy and Army veterans, but they are veterans, and they talk the language. But we also have clients that, because of their position or medical condition, have lost their jobs. So we have a lot of clients that actually are working. They're helping us, and it's amazing how they are helping other families in the same or similar position. And it really is just working. I can't explain how it is, but it's working. And
it's all coming together. You're also the president of the law school in Charleston, and you've had, I know you mentor law school students, but I know that when this project was in creation, that you were also involving law students. Is that correct?
Yes, I had a meeting yesterday with the incoming president of the student body and the outgoing president of the student body. And the incoming president couldn't stop talking about his work at a law firm in Charleston that's handling Camp Lejeune cases. And we had most, instead of talking about student bar association, things like that, we talked about Camp Lejeune and how excited he was to be involved in this historic case. So we have students that we're giving the opportunity if they want a part-time job, as a lot of students do. We're giving them that opportunity to help. I think it's going to help a lot of people, especially the law students, learning a little bit. We have 15 or 20 interns coming in this summer from various either law students or otherwise to come help, and they're all excited, and rightly so.
Yeah. Ed, you're not only good at law and passionate at law. What's just incredible about you is that you're just sort of a jack of all trades. You are also, before Camp Lejeune, you were a very successful lawyer, businessman. You're involved in real estate. You're involved. You also are involved with the magazine Garden and Guns. You've got so many other projects going on at the same time. I don't know how you do that. And I know that lawyers, like in our business, we have, we joke around lawyers not being good business people, but that is the complete opposite with you. You have so many things going on at the same time, and you seem to be doing everything so well. Like, what is the secret? What do you do that's so unique?
I think I recognize that I'm not very bright sometimes, and I get good people to help me. So a friend of mine who's a journalist came to see me 3 years ago and said that the local city paper in Charleston was getting ready to shut down because the owner, who'd been running it for years, had cancer and was shutting it down. And would I be willing to get involved? And we did. And several weeks ago, we won 15 first place awards, 10 second place awards, and we won the best of the best award in South Carolina over all newspapers. Mm-hmm. And it's not me. I didn't have anything to do with it. I encourage, I inspire, I try to do what I can to get people to the best of their game. But it's amazing sometimes if you let people be themselves and not try to micromanage them, how much better they can be.
Yeah. And another area that you're just incredible in is cooking. You are an amazing chef, I would say. You cook. In fact, in the 2 years we have worked together, you have cooked more meals for me than my husband. And he knows it. But you have these meetings in your summer kitchen, and law firms would come to visit you and talk about the Camp Lejeune case, and you always would cook for them and would host. And I was just blown away. At some point, I thought, there's no way we could do business like this, Ed. Let's just have people come in the office in 30-minute or an hour increments. And you would say, no, I'm going to cook dinner tonight. And you would leave your office and you would go to the grocery store and you would pick up the ingredients. You would go into your home and your summer kitchen and you would cook for them and have a meal and have really meaningful conversations over dinner. I've never seen that. And it's just so unique to you. But tell me your passion with cooking and how you're able to win people over with your food.
My grandmother, who in my youth, in the 50s and 60s, she was a home culinary teacher in Charleston, South Carolina. And we would go visit our grandparents, and there would be sometimes 2 or 3 young brides getting ready to get married, being taught to cook by my grandmother. That was a different day. But that's, the moms and dads would send them over to my grandmother. You need to learn how to cook if you're going to get married. And we grew up cooking with my grandmother in the kitchen. And of course, my mother was an excellent cook. And so one night a week when we were children, we had to plan the night's meal. Each had four children in our family. So I'm number two. So my night was Tuesday night. So that morning over breakfast, we would plan with mom what we wanted to have for dinner, and we would help cook it. We would help prepare it. Then we had to, of course, clean up. But that was our day, and that was what we did, and that's the way mom did it. So we've just have always enjoyed cooking. My father enjoyed outdoor cooking, and I wouldn't say I'm a great cook. I labor. I can tell you, my wife has said many a time, I think you failed in this one, So
Well, what I've tried has been absolutely incredible. So you're just so talented. Um, I want to learn a little bit about sort of, as we said, we are going all the way back to the beginning. Why did you go to law school? What prompted you to go in this career?
Marina, it's a sad story. I went to college on a golf scholarship. Excuse me. And my freshman year, I learned about girls and beer. And I didn't do very well in my studies. And my father, who was very matter of fact, you did things right or you didn't do them at all. And I stayed out my second year and went to work at United Parcel Service. Was in pre-med my first year, and my father was a doctor, and I thought that's what I ought to do. I didn't do too well in the sciences for some reason. So while I was working at United Parcel Service, I took some night courses at the university, one of which was a business law course. I fell in love with it, and I knew right then I wanted to go into law. So I went back to school, and I had 3 jobs when I went back to school. I worked in the afternoon as a runner at a law firm. I worked from Sunday night to Thursday night as a night auditor at the Holiday Inn. I'd go in at 11 o'clock at night and work to 7. And I did the books after we closed out each night. Then you'd sleep on the couch, and if someone would come in, you let them in. And then on the weekends, I worked in sales. And so each Monday, I'd take my 3 paychecks to the school to pay my tuition. That's how I got through school. So when I went to law school, I had to work my way through law school, and it's not that I'm not crying about that, but it did help me learn to balance time. Help me learn to, if I had 2 hours to study, I better get it done. And so it kind of made me a little bit of a quick study, and it helped me quite a bit.
Yeah. And your father was a doctor. So was he thrilled about you going to law school and suing doctors?
Well, he wasn't thrilled about suing doctors, of course. But when I did have cases against medical doctors, I didn't bring any local cases. I've never brought cases locally. But I'd ask Dad about them. I'd say, Dad, what do you think? And he would look at the case and he'd say, son, this is kind of not, and he would talk to me and we would talk about it. But all of a sudden he would say, I can't believe this doctor would do this. Those are the cases I would take. And so it helped me. It helped me a lot to choose the right cases, helped me learn how to pick the right cases and not bring frivolous claims.
Yeah, yeah. And in conclusion, you've been so gracious with your time and really taking us on a journey. In conclusion, what is your message to your clients who you are dedicating your life to advocate for? And what is your message to the legal industry, having seen what you've seen both in the legal and the business sense?
Well, I'm eternally grateful to my clients for their trusting us to do what we are doing. We will not let them down. But my message to the legal industry is let's do this right. Let's let this be an example on other cases of how to do it. I think we can. I think if we do it right, if we keep client focus as our number one goal, then things will work out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think you're right on. And I just want to thank you for being you, for trying relentlessly to bring justice, for doing it with so much humility, for doing it in a way that you can see the passion, you can feel the passion is palpable. It's just refreshing in so many ways. And I'm, again, very, very fortunate and grateful to have you in my world, to be able to play a very small part in you pursuing this case and hopefully other cases. So thank you for your time, and God bless.
Well, thank you, Mirena. I can't take all of the credit. I have to say your help with us has been immeasurably important, and we could not have gotten where we are today without your help. Thank you.
Thank you. And it's my pleasure.
Thank you.
Thanks. Stay tuned for upcoming episodes available on popular platforms such as iTunes, Spotify, and YouTube.